So for number 18 for Throwback Thursday, I think you can guess what number 18 is. But anyway, it's got this little eyes at the top of my head. Anyway, so I've been mentioning Throwback Thursday, my favourite albums, and I did the top 10, and now I'm going into the next load, and this is number 18. So I'm going to mention, if you want to watch the top 10 ones, you can. Number 11 was Michael Jackson's Bad. Number 12 was Voodoo by D'Angelo. Number 13 was Embryo by Maxwell. Number 14 was Adjustments by Bill Withers. Number 15 was Experience and Judgment by Andy Bay. Number 16 was Triumph by the Jacksons. And number 17 was I Am by Earth, Wind & Fire. So this is number 18, Dangerous by Michael Jackson. So I mentioned about Bad, that Bad had to be the follow-up to Dangerous. So then we also look at that Bad, as successful as it was, not as successful as Thriller, but also needed an equally new thing for the 90s. Dangerous, as a fun fact, actually outsold Bad. Most people don't realise this. Dangerous sold 35 million copies. Now, what you've got to consider of this is 35 million copies. It sold about nearly 30 at the time, and the 5 was after all the allegations. The allegations actually stopped the momentum of Dangerous by 1993, actually propelling, because he was on tour and had to stop due to them. Now, obviously, I don't want to go into personal things with Michael Jackson. I want to go into the music, because this is what it's about. It's about music albums. So, Dangerous. Dangerous is an impact of an album. Bad, I was 6 or 7, but Dangerous is an impact of an album. Went that extra step more than Bad. Now, people will be like, well, you're saying Dangerous is better than Bad. Well, no, clearly I've said Bad and Thriller, it was my favourite album of all time. But Dangerous has something which a lot of people seem to neglect. As an album in 1991, Michael Jackson was under a lot of pressure. He was the king of the 80s in pop music, in songwriting, in album sales. And most people thought that originally Dangerous was going to be a greatest hits album called Decade. It wasn't going to be an album of original material. It was going to be like all these greatest hits and then about 5 new songs. And Michael started working on these songs and he loved it so much that he became this album. So with that, Michael Jackson wanted to come up with something big impact. And Dangerous is actually my favourite album cover. As you can see, this is an original placard you would have seen in Woolworths in England. So you can see it's a new Dangerous Michael Jackson. And I've had this for years. I've had this since like the early 90s. And you can see it's pretty mash up. I've carried it so many places in my time. But Dangerous, and I've actually got a pop-up album, and I don't want to show that because I don't want to break it. Teddy Riley, because again, this is what I want to talk about. This is away from Quincy Jones. This is about a Teddy Riley production with Michael Jackson. Bruce Swedien made this album. So, first of all, if you don't know who Teddy Riley is the new Jack Swing creator. Comes up with things like My Prerogative, came up with stuff with Guy, eventually did stuff with Blackstreet, did stuff with the show for Dougie Fresh. Teddy Riley was the new great producer. And people, when they heard his music, it was fresh, it was funky, it was different. So accordingly, Teddy Riley was recommended to Michael Jackson by Quincy Jones, and Quincy and Michael's course of making music, I think, had run out. I think gladly as well, because to be honest, I think Quincy Jones, after Bad, when I heard Back on the Block and stuff, I think his music started sounding very dated, and I think Michael really wanted something fresh, funky, edgy. I think Michael was becoming more edgy in his music, less from the pop sensibility, but with pop melodies. So with Dangerous, as you can see, this amazing front cover with all the ideas. Again, I could just do a video of this, but again, look on YouTube, they talk about all these ideas of the album cover. So some of the tracks, why didn't I recommend this as much as Bad or Thriller? Well, because their songs were before, so this was later. However, some of the best Michael Jackson songs are on this album. Most people would know. So, a couple of songs I love on this album. Why You Wanna Trip on Me, not written by Michael Jackson, but about the state of the world. And you've got to remember the social conditioning of that time. 1991, there was Rodney King had been beaten up. There was civil rights in LA, LA riots, and Michael Jackson was within this, and he was seeing all these different things. and he wanted to be more edgy. His what he wore as clothes had to slightly change, and his perception of the world was changing. And I feel his music especially wanted to become more urban. Again, I don't think urban's the right word. It's just more for the black audience. So Why You Wanna Trip on Me, this great little ideas of, this beat, rolling in a car, guitar, and this idea of he's talking about the social conscious of the world. Then he talks in the Closet, which is about this idea of a love relationship, keeping private. Again, originally that In the Closet was supposed to be a duet with Madonna. Don't think it would have ever worked. And also he didn't like the idea of In the Closet because they said Madonna didn't like that idea because she said In the Closet was the idea of LGBT people being not to be able to tell who they were. But Michael was more about In the Closet. I think he was using it as a play on terms of people, meaning that his private life of his relationships had to be private. He didn't want them public. So In the Closet is kind of this idea, great idea with this percussive ideas going on. One of the things I love about this album is it uses a lot of soundscapes, and you can tell it's like the beginnings of where sampling and hip hop, the edgier hip hop with the beat, with the MPCs and so forth, we use. She Drives Me Wild, using all the sounds of cars, screeching, sirens, all to make up this soundscape. One thing about Michael Jackson as well, he's according to Teddy, he used to say that when he had a lot of the drum patterns, they weren't using, though they were programmed, they weren't normal drum sounds. He would actually get him to go to junkyards and make guys banging the sounds and then incorporate them. Remember the Time, which is, accordingly, Teddy Riley wrote that about a woman he was wanting to be with, or a friend of his. I think her name was Cynthia Robinson. I can't really remember. Again, Teddy Riley talks a lot about this album in his interviews on YouTube, and please go to his Instagram channel. You won't be able to share any of his posts because he's quite anti-COVID like I am, and the vaccines and so forth. But however, Teddy does talk about a lot of stuff he did with Michael. There's a lot of lectures he does, and he talks about a lot of production ideas, and he's very interesting. He's very open about it. He talks more about what actually happened behind the scenes more than Quincy ever does. And also he's not negative towards Michael, unlike Quincy. So Remember the Time, probably Michael's best song on this album. Again, it's like a 2-4-5-1 turnaround. It's kind of like old jazz music, or that idea. So again, very clever. But again, always when you think of these things, you always look at the visual concept of it, the videos, why the video is important. So Remember the Time, again, has this definitely New Jack Swing. The bass line's quite minimal in it, but again, the vocals, the idea of it, the concept of this relationship he talks about. And again, I'm not too sure with it whether Teddy wrote some of the lyrics, and I'm going to say I probably reckon he did, but it was more of a project. But I definitely know Teddy did the production. Michael definitely, when he came up with the melody, was it Teddy done the production, then he came up with the melody on top, or Teddy gave him an idea? I don't know. Teddy can clarify this for me. Can't Let Her Get Away, which is the uses of James Brown samples within that. Again, some of these songs probably not so memorable, say like from Bad or Thriller, but still good songs. And again, great album to play in the car, especially when you want a bit of upbeat when you're driving or so forth. Heal the World, typical ballad like Man in the Mirror. A bit mawkish, not my thing. Teddy didn't produce that, gladly. Black or White, which was co-produced by Bill Bottrell, who also was now becoming the rock guy within Michael's camp. So Bill Bottrell also co-produced Giveintome, and I think he also had some ideas of Why You Wanna Trip on Me on the guitar part, the rock guy. Black or White was the actual first single from Dangerous, and it was very controversial when it was released. I remember in 1991, the album, the single got released on Top of the Pops, and everybody saw him dancing with the Native Americans and dancing with the Indian woman, and then you saw all the Cossack dances and all these different things, going through the flames, talking about the KKK, again, he's not afraid of them, and all the different things. And then he goes into the Panther dance, which caused all this absolute controversy, and most people went ape shit, like Michael Jackson decided to smash a thing where it said KKK rules on it, and he was against the whole thing, and people said it was violent. Michael Jackson, this wasn't appropriate for kids. Again, this is where this sort of controversy comes, but it was an artistic view of how he felt, and the idea of him saying he wants this idea of utopia, doesn't matter whether you're black or white. But then, the symbolism of becoming a Black Panther, I don't think it was by accident, but it was the idea of Michael using dance as interpretive dance as a way of his anger. So Black or White, I think, is it a commercial track? Probably a bit cheesy sometimes, but I don't know, it's a well-written track. That's the thing, and it was effective, and it was a number one mostly around the world. So, you know, all the controversy, still Michael Jackson can write good songs. See, this is the thing, the media always like to do that. Michael Jackson, they will say, oh, he wasn't that good, he wasn't this, but Michael Jackson still made money. He still had success. People still can hum his songs. So the media now need to fuck off sometimes on that sort of stuff. Who Is It? Track again, sort of like In the Closet, this sort of relationship issue. Same with Remember the Time. He's talking about this idea, and again he's using these beatbox ideas, these arrangements, a bit more minimalist. It's actually kind of a rewrite of Billie Jean, but it's got this really, actually the chorus is really catchy, and it's, you know, some interesting ideas. Michael trying different ideas with that, and probably one of the most catchy songs on the album. Giving to Me, rock song, did very well in Europe, not so well in the States, funny enough, I don't know why. But it's a really good track. In fact, it never got to number one in England because of an awful song by 2 Unlimited called No Limit, Beat It, for some reason. But again, Giving to Me is still a song everybody listens to years later. Nobody listens to No Limited because it's very of its time. Giving to Me is this great idea about him talking about relationship, about how this person has to kind of, you know, meet him in the middle. Will You Be There? It's like a ballad, like mixture of like Man in the Mirror, kind of Heal the World, but it's also more of a gospel ballad. Really beautiful song. And actually, if you go on YouTube, you can see the backing of how they made it, and it's really beautiful. And they show the choirs, how the piano playing is done, and all that stuff. So there's a lot of background stuff on Dangerous. You can see the background how it's made. Keep the Faith, written by Sadea Garrett, who wrote Man in the Mirror, and also was the featured vocalist on I Just Can't Stop Loving You. Really good track. Again, sort of like got this gospel element. So Michael's kind of using more of these different elements of his music. Yes, he's got the funk. Yes, he's got the current R&B sound, but then he's got the ballads. Then he's got the rock music, and then he's got gospel. So he's kind of showing his range, which is why Michael, to me, is up on the epilongs as best musician, because he had so much range in different styles and was good at everything. You know, it's not like you listened to a rock song and he was crap. It was just as good as any rocker. You know, if he did a gospel song, he was just as good as any gospel singer. You know, so Michael was talented. Gone Too Soon, ballad, a bit syrupy for some people, but and actually it was sung by Usher at his memorial. But Gone Too Soon was actually, it then actually became, when I think he released the song, it became a song which was, the money went to the AIDS Foundation to do with Ryan White, who was a very famous child who got HIV from a blood transfusion, and then people at his school didn't treat him well because he had HIV, and he was shunned, and Michael Jackson befriended him and tried to help him out, and I think he paid for his funeral. I mean, there was a whole thing in the early 90s and late 80s, and how he helped him. I think Gone Too Soon, when he released the track, probably one of Michael's best ballads, actually. You know, I say it's syrupy, but it's actually a very good song, very well written. I can't remember who wrote it, so do forgive me on that one. And then Dangerous, the title track, an epic sound, you know, real good sound. Again, play that in a studio, play it in the car, got this epic, you know, all this whoop and all these sounds. And you've got this aircraft carrier coming in again. And when you actually went to see the Dangerous tour, which I did, I managed to see Michael Jackson 3 times, Bad, Dangerous, and History. And Dangerous, Bad's a great tour, but Dangerous, when he comes in with that, and he's, you know, the sounds of jam and everything. But Dangerous was also a track which I think, if Michael didn't have the allegations, would have released a video, and that would have been a song released, and I think he would have done very well. By 1995, when the History album came out, he did Dangerous with a like kind of a Smooth Criminal effect in the dance and everything, and was an amazing song. Dangerous, actually, if you listen to it, is again influenced by the sketch Girl Hunt from Bandwagon, which is where Fred Astaire uses a rap where he's talking about, you know, I've seen this girl and she's she's bad, she's dangerous, and Michael used that idea. So again, he was always listening to these musicals, getting ideas and then putting them into his songs. So Dangerous is kind of like the sequel to Smooth Criminal. It's like Smooth Criminal is about a girl who's died, but Dangerous is about a girl he's met and how then he treats him and so forth. So there's always this kind of angst, and people always say Michael Jackson had this paranoia, but I think what it is also when Michael Jackson was so famous, he had these different things. He wanted relationships with people, but he always had to be careful who they were. Were they dating him because he was famous, or were they dating him because they liked him? And I think Michaels did that in this album. One of the things I love about Dangerous as well is when you had this album, you look at the artwork. I mean, it's just beautiful. Really clever ideas. There was also a book called Dance in the Dark, which is a book of all his poems. And then also Michael was also a great artist, could draw. Fantastic artist. I've actually got some sketches of Michael, which he was a great artist. This painting wasn't done by him. It was done by a guy called Mark Rylas, I think, someone like that. Mark Ryden. Sorry, yes, Mark Ryden. So Mark Ryden actually was a guy who wrote a book in the 80s about Michael Jackson. So do forgive me on that one. Mark Ryden was the guy who came up with this illustration, and it actually is a mural. And it's actually there was a Michael Jackson exhibition in London where you could actually see that. And like I said, there's a collector's edition where you open it up. There's a big pop-up. And accordingly, Teddy saw this. He explains all this in, again, another video. So, Dangerous, number 18 in my list. And Michael Jackson's, I think, third best album. And that's not to say it's not as good as Bad or Thriller. It's just that of its time, I think Michael had always done other stuff. And there is just some tracks on here is not as good. But musically, if you want to understand about production, idea about programming, and also about still is the production level and the songwriting level is still top notch, then Dangerous is highly recommended. And as you can see, I do love the artwork. I mean, this is a bit silly, but I've got actually loads of tour memorabilia. I mean, I've got a cushion here. I've got all sorts. I mean, I think it's a great album sleeve. So again, when you do art projects, always think of what you're looking at as a concept. And again, this is a great concept of all the ideas of Michael.